Hi, everybody. I want to thank you for joining us this afternoon, or at least for this episode, regardless of what time you have. Uh, Today, we have an exciting episode. We're talking to the founder of Oyster Aero, Jeff Jerge, and we're going to find out how he went from pilot to Boeing executive and now trying to conquer the aviation aftermarket. I think it's a great story, and I can't wait to hear all about it. So thank you for joining us. And in the meantime, don't forget to click subscribe. Thank you. There we go. Hey, good morning. Jeff, thanks for joining me today. I'm super excited to have you on board. Guys, if you don't know who Jeff is, I think you've probably been living under a rock. But I know I met this guy for the first time at ACPC in August, and I've enjoyed every moment in speaking with him since. So without any further ado, Jeff, why don't you say hi to everybody?
Thanks, Ralph, for having me on your podcast. And hello. Things have been pretty exciting for Oyster, so we're glad to be here. Love talking about it.
That's awesome. So let's just dive right in, if you don't mind. We've talked about this a couple of times, but I think you've had a really wild ride in aviation. So can you take me or us, hopefully more people will listen to this, through your journey a little bit?
Sure. I don't think it's that uncommon for a lot of us in the industry. I was a weird kid looking out the window in the classroom, watching airplanes fly over anytime. I think we all were. And so, I went to Embry-Riddle to fly and got all my ratings. And this was in the late 90s. So, once I got out, we were on the cusp of 2000 or 9/11. And, so the prospects weren't that great. And I have a lot of friends that stayed with it. But I ended up just getting my MBA and then worked for TWA for a bit and then started at the supply chain at Aviall. So, I've been in the industry since the late 90s and have loved every single minute of it.
Yeah, I mean, I see that, and like I said, it's a wild ride going from being a pilot to whatever happened in between, and then sort of going to work with Boeing and GECAS. What specifically led you there, or what were some of the events that sort of got you to that position in your career?
So as I said, I started with Aviall, and while there, I was in charge of the first GE engine distribution contract, the
Hmm.
CF650 and 80A. So I got to know engines pretty well and spent a lot of time in Cincinnati, and then Boeing purchased Aviall in 2006. So I was there for that. And one of the first things that they wanted to do was they said, "Hey, we're going to close down the Long Beach and Seattle service centers, the component maintenance centers, and AVL is going to stand up an MRO." And they tapped me on the shoulder and said, "Jeff, why don't you go do that?" And I was like, "I really don't know anything about MROs running one." And so they said, "Oh, you're pretty smart. You'll figure it out." So
Trial by fire.
yeah, so, went to Long Beach, went to Seattle, spent a lot of time kind of learning how an MRO operated. And then I was the accountable manager. We wrote the maintenance manual. We hired the quality people. We hired the customer support. We hired the operations. And then, of course, all the salespeople and growing the repair management capabilities. So I would say when I look back at my career, that was probably one of the most rewarding moments is to start an MRO really in Dallas, and that shop today has done really, really well. I mean, it's done good for the Boeing company, so to see that continue to go is pretty awesome.
That's great, and it sort of gives me an intro into the next question that I wanted to ask you, but I'm going to ask anyway. Um, How did you get into, I mean, you just told us a little bit about the story, but how did that lead you to today, to Oyster? How did things go to lead you there?
Well, like all things, it's the line isn't linear. So I moved to Memphis to work for GECAS. And so, when I had worked for Aviall, I kind of had new distribution down. I had the GE engine line down. I had the MRO world down, but I hadn't really done parts trading. And, showed up at GECAS thinking I was going to, teach them all my wisdom. And I realized in the first 2 minutes I was uh, way out of my league. But they I kind of learned the parts trading business there, worked there for about a year and a half. And it was still the old Memphis group predominantly,
Hmm.
management team. And so, I kind of cut my teeth there for a couple of years on parts trading. And then, of course, I went and worked with ILS for 9 years and have been consulting since 2020. A couple of things. So first, I've always wanted to hang my own shingle, and so this is sort of my fulfillment of that idea. But two, um, I wanted to try to make a difference in the industry as, altruistic, idealistic, whatever that word is. I wanted to focus on an area that I feel like everybody's kind of missed. And when you look at surplus inventory, it's been listed on marketplaces. Sales teams have had it, and everybody complains about it. I mean, over the
Right.
years, I mean, for years and years and years and years and years, I have all this surplus inventory. I don't know what to do with it. And so we wanted to come along and try to solve for that. And so that's kind of how we go to market today. We say, okay, you've listed inventory on a listing service, and you've had your sales team. Now what? And the logical solution is scrap or just hang on to it. And so we want to, or we exist to bring incremental straight profit because a lot of
Right.
this inventory is written down. These are old packages. So by putting a light on surplus inventory and kind of making it cool, which we try to do in Oyster, it helps bring, residual value on these packages and straight profits of the business. And also we hook buyers up. I mean, buyers can get discounted parts. We kind of put a light on that. And so that's kind of how we ended up where we are today.
Well, I think that told me part of the next question, so I'll skip it in terms of aha moments, but I can relate to everything that you just said, or a lot of things that you just said. I'm going to ask you something that's going to have you pull back on your MBA. So I don't want to take you back to school, but I'm really, really interested in hearing how you've seen the supply chain change over the years leading to where we are today.
Well, I think as far as the way aircraft parts are bought and sold, it hasn't really changed all that much. When you look at technology and things like that, so what I've experienced over the years is, buyers and sellers kind of hang on to those processes. Like, hey, Ralph, you and I have a relationship because you call me to buy a light bulb, right? And I'm going to quote you, and we're going to talk about that and talk about your family and all that. Um, but in reality, there is a shift towards, digitization of those low dollar components. I mean, if you
Right.
can just check out on a consumable, who wants, unless it's a package, who really wants to talk about that? And then, of course, data entry. With all the automation happening, some of the things that you all are doing in RFQ management and as far as just automating all that data entry,
Right.
that's probably the biggest change. And then, on the horizon, certainly, I mean, companies are like GA Telesis. I mean, they've made major investments in digital. Sat Air's made major investments in digital, Airbus. So I think, the trend towards e-commerce is certainly heading that way. We're okay at Oyster not being at the forefront of that because a lot of what we do is highly negotiated, materials inspected, tags are reviewed. It doesn't really fit into that e-commerce model. So we're okay letting, quite frankly, the big guys invest and go that route while we kind of hang back and hold the relationship side of the business, understanding that Oyster isn't a place to go buy a light bulb.
So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think those are all reasons that led you to go ahead and build this. Am I right? Or were there other things that you sort of thought about that you wanted to capitalize on?
No, I mean, I think, addressable market, everybody has surplus inventory and we are not a listing service at all. We look like one when you say, "Oh, I'm going to load parts and advertise them," of course, but we really are a channel partner. And so when we come in, we spend a lot of time onboarding with our suppliers. So we learn their inventory. We put a huge amount of R&D into parts master records and kind of understanding what goes on what and who's turning wrenches on what, because then we kind of actively help sales teams get material sold. So We'll work alongside of teams as far as, moving material and the way that we build, the way that we push, the way that we do everything. It's really more of a channel partner relationship than any kind of advertising.
That says it well. I mean, obviously there's a need for it in the market, and as you said in the past, it's something that was forgotten. Whenever it got to that point, it was forgotten. You mentioned scrap. There were other things that you can do with it, but you put the spotlight back on it, and I think the way that you go after it, or at least help them go after it as that channel partner, I think is second to none. So I like that a lot. Um, where did the name come from? Tell me a little bit about Oyster Aero. I've asked you once or
Sure.
twice, but
Yeah. So, one comment that I will say is we do not deal with junk, just kind of falling back on that.
right,
Like somebody brought me DC-9 material or 1960s Lear material. We can't create demand when there is none. So what we
right.
do is we try to focus on, I mean, pe- the nice thing about surplus is every organization is going to have a different policy. I mean, in the chemical world, it's surplus after 90 days, right?
Hmm.
And so you kind of
Right,
look at every organization is going to have a different definition. So there's some really, really strong content on Oyster. Right now, we're running packages for A320 Neo CO with Region. Yeah, PW 4000 with True Aero. I'm going to be working with a couple other companies on some new material we've done. Air Transat. I'll get into that in a little bit. All right, on the name. So we try to have fun, and with surplus inventory, it's we get to have a little bit of fun, and so it's incredibly fulfilling to do what we're doing. But I grew up in Maryland on the Chesapeake Bay, and when I was naming the company, I was going to name it something really silly, or not silly, something very boring, and it was going to be like warehouse solutions or something. And my wife and I might have been a couple gin and tonics in, and we're just like, let's just have fun with it. Let's just, and my whole family kind of got involved, and they're like, yeah, do Oyster Aero. And so there's some ties to my roots where I grew up, but really, the purpose of Oyster, if you think about it, is our tagline is there's pearls in every inventory. You just have to dig a little to find it. And so when you think about the name, I get to be the chief of pearls, and we kind of take that through a lot of the things that we name. Like we came out with a product, the Pearl Blast, and we get to have a lot of fun.
right.
We have bundles of oysters, those are packages. So we try to have a lot of fun, but also recognize that we deal with some of the biggest aircraft manufacturers and airlines in the world. So we take it very seriously, but we try to have a little fun while we're doing it as well.
I love that story. So I don't mean to put you on the spot. You sort of just answered it, but what would you say your elevator pitch is?
Well, when people ask that, I say, I hope we're in the Chicago Tower or Empire State Building because it's really long. But I think at the end of the day, what Oyster is it's a tactical team on connecting buyer and seller on inventory that has doesn't just fly off the shelf. So we
Right.
put a lot of effort behind data. We put a lot of effort behind true outreach. We make phone calls all day long. Very rarely do we pick up the phone and say, "Hey, why don't you buy Oyster?" We say, "Hey, this new A320 package just hit. Are you interested in buying that?" So we kind of have built our little community, our little country club really. And it's odd to think Oyster's a little surplus country club. It's sort of like jumbo shrimp. It's surplus isn't cool, but we've made it cool, and we've created our little community.
I love that story. So, you know, I know you like working with companies. I know you like helping companies, and what you just said, I think, is a real pain point in the industry. Can you add a little bit more about how Oyster solves for that or helps with that? I know you said you talk to the customers. I know you said you get to know them. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, when we bring in, we really kind of understand the material, and then we also know who the active traders are in that market. And, the one thing that I'll say is, you can't get a better valuation on inventory than having a strong network of traders. And it's not like, I mean, I call it a country club, but there's it's not closed. You know what I mean? So we can constantly add traders to that network. But one of the things that we get to do as a startup is we get to really, really understand our customers and understand what they like to buy. So, I mean, I have a full I'm not going to use the term Rolodex because that's going to age me, but I can tell you at any point you can give me a platform and I can tell you five people that actively trade that platform and would like to see deals. So, um, and then of course we do a lot of advertising and what we've done is on one hand, we've taken all these processes that happen in email and a very closed network and it does work both ways. If you're selling a package, you want as many eyeballs on it as possible. And then if you're buying it, you want to be the only person, buying it. But we keep a pretty strong network. Our data for what our market valuations are between all the consultants and the parts traders that we work with. We provide a lot of insight back into the material, and we try to get things moving. So.
That's the really, really good point. It led into what I was going to ask, but I think you already covered it in terms the improvements that some of your customers or new customers tend to see. So can you share maybe, hopefully there's a lot of them and there will continue to be a lot of them, but can you share maybe like a win scenario or two?
Oh yeah. So I guess it just depends. Like, we had an airline that has used us for two packages. The first one was an expendables package that listed out for $800,000. The second one was a Boeing rotables package that went for 1.5 million. So it was very rewarding to take an airline package for a fleet that they transitioned out of and got that moved. And there was incredible value there. So it's not like we stuck it to a parts trader. Like the value created out of those packages for the trader that was willing to buy in bulk and then hold and sell piece by piece is phenomenal. So it's really cool in your
Right.
job when you fulfill the mission and everybody's happy because everybody got what they want. So airline bundles. We've worked with an OEM on moving some avionics packages. We've worked with a leasing company currently. There's five or six packages for A320 Neo and CO out there right now, where these are valued million and a half, and bidding started at 200,000. So
Wow.
it's really it's so rewarding to get mission accomplished and get people on both sides of the transaction feeling pretty good about it.
It does. It takes a lot of work. I've had a couple of opportunities in my life to try to build one or two things, and I loved them. And I completely respect the position that you're in, primarily because I've lived it at some points in my life, and I understand what it takes. But in speaking with you, I think I get the feeling that you're happy with what you're doing, and I think that translates into everything that you do. I mean, I don't think I'm wrong about that. Anybody can see that. So I'm super happy that this is excuse me. I'm super happy that this is exactly how it's going down. So looking ahead for Oyster, any new features, anything on the horizon that people can look forward to?
Yeah, we're doing some things like cleanup that we should have done when we started. So like, multi-part search, being able to drop in hundreds of part numbers and be able to return a result. That's something that we're implementing next. And then we're gonna be working on some of the airline side a little bit just to help them with coming in and being able to find more discounts on the airline friendly buyer side. We have 11 airlines today, and
Wow.
we're in constant communication with them on things that they want. And I will say one thing that again, being a startup, is we get the advantage of is our board of directors is the aftermarket, and that's kind of how we wake up every single day. We brought on a couple of people, and it's one of those things where I remember at some of other companies that I've worked for, even back at some OEMs and things like that, it's like, well, this is what the customer wants, and you start to lose. what really the
Right.
customers want in the bigger organizations that you get. And in fact, a lot of your time is like preparing PowerPoints for the board meeting for, and so you just kind of lose touch with that front line. And so our thought is if the aftermarket wants it, we must do it. Not we should do it, not we want to do it, not we'd like to. If I always tell people, if you want a flying monkey in the middle of this, trading platform, we're going to put it if that makes the transaction happen. So, it's just we must perform and do for what the industry wants. And so when we get suggestions, they're not suggestions, they're almost mandates. And I can point to 100 examples where someone has helped shape what Oyster is today. But we're also new. We're 11, 12 months in. We have a long way to go. But everything that we do, the whole purpose for everything that we develop and do as a channel partner is to try to get deals done.
It's amazing. I agree with everything that you just said, and I think I can see it too. So before we wrap up, how does somebody get started with you? What do they have to do? Any hoops they have to jump through?
Well, it started with is if you're a buyer, it's not in our model to charge for access to the platform. So you can log in, create it's 3 screens. We need to know who you are, especially if you're going to be making offers. And then, so you can just come in and start using the platform. There's no friction whatsoever.
Okay, good.
Yep, on the sell side, we kind of work with each seller on an individual basis. So, some businesses will be like, well, here's the lunch menu and here's a dinner menu. Where do you fit? And that's not how we operate at all. How we structure, how we work with you just financially, how we work with you on moving your material is a little bit different for everybody because it is pretty much personalized. So, Jeff at oysterarrow.com. We're going to be at MRO next week, running around, and so you can easily get in touch with us. And I would say, you know, we structure it just specifically to what that company is looking to get accomplished.
That's amazing. I'm glad you're going to be at MRO next week. I wish you the very best. We're going to be up there too. I think it's going to be a tremendous show as well.
Yeah, 1,000 exhibitors. It's
Yeah, I
it's
know.
it's
That's
it's
that's a
amazing.
lot.
Like
That's a lot.
it's huge, and I can't even keep up with all of the after events. So anyway, we'll have a good
Yeah,
time.
absolutely. Yeah,
We'll
my goal is to run out of business cards, hopefully on the third day, but we'll see what happens with that. Well,
exactly. So
I wanted to thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. Sorry. I wanted to thank you one more time. Jeff Jerge again. Good luck next week at MRO. Good luck to you at Oyster Aero. I think you guys are doing super good work. And I'm very much interested in how you continue to do that. So thank you again for jumping on with us today.
yeah, absolutely. And thanks for having me, Ralph.
Anytime, man. Thank you so much. Take care.
All right, bye.